Most beginners think their footage looks flat because they need a better drone, a more expensive sensor, a bigger location. I thought the same thing for 8 months. I owned a DJI Mini 2SE, the cheapest entry drone DJI makes. I posted around 100 videos in half a year, barely any views, and every time I opened my footage I had the same flat feeling. Something was missing and I just couldn't name it. I thought it was a drone and I started saving for an upgrade. But it wasn't a drone, it was 3 settings I never changed inside the app. The moment I changed them, the same Mini 2SE produced footage that finally looked like the shots in my head. The first one is shutter speed. By default your drone uses auto exposure. That sounds harmless, but it's not. Auto means the shutter changes constantly based on the light. Every time a cloud passes, every time you tilt the gimbal, every time you fly into shade, the shutter is recalibrating. That constant recalibration is part of why your footage looks inconsistent. The fix is the 180-degree rule. Your shutter speed should be double your frame rate. If you shoot 24 frames per second, your shutter should be 150. If you shoot 30 frames, your shutter should be 160, and if you shoot 60 for slow motion, your shutter should be 120. The math is simple. Double the frame rate, that's your shutter. And why does that actually work? Because at that shutter speed, each frame captures a tiny amount of motion blur. Your eye sees it as natural. When the shutter is faster, each frame is razor sharp, and the brain reads it as digital. Like security camera footage or smartphone slow motion that looks weirdly crispy. Here's the catch though. The moment you go manual on the shutter, your image gets too bright outside. And that's why most pilots don't do it. They try it, the image blows out, then they switch back to auto and are at the exact same level of footage again. And that brings us to the second setting, an ND filter. It sits in front of your lens like a sunglass for your drone. It blocks light so you can keep the shutter at, for example, 150 even on a bright day. Most people skip this because it sounds technical, but it's not. You just buy an ND filter set, you screw the right wrench on, and you get a clean exposure with proper motion blur. I usually use the K&F concept filters. They're around 40 to 60 euros for a full set. When you go really cheap, the filters can tint the image slightly green, and that's really hard to fix in editing. And the super expensive Polar Pro ones are great if you want to achieve end-level cinema quality, but you mostly don't need them. The strength you use with your ND filters depends on the light. When you shoot on sunrise or sunset, when the sun is actually rising below the horizon, you usually don't need an ND filter or only an ND8. When you're shooting at a cloudy day, you mostly need an ND16. And if you're shooting on mid-morning or afternoon, an ND33 is the perfect spot. And for the harsh midday sun, I usually use an ND64 to 256. You don't need to memorize all that. You can start with an ND16 in your bag as a default and add the others as you need them. The point is just to keep your shutter at the double of your frame rate. So you've got 2 settings down. Shutter at double your frame rate, for example 150 or 160, and the ND filter to balance the light. Your footage will already look different, but the third setting is where most people quietly fail when they get to the first 2 right. Since the third setting is your color profile. Out of the box, your drone shoots in normal mode, which is a baked-in look. It looks fine on the screen, but it's already been processed. The drone has already decided how warm, how saturated and how contrast-free the image is. You can't really push that in editing because the information isn't there. The alternative is D-Log-M. It looks flat and gray on the screen, which is the entire point. The drone is capturing more information but not processing it. You're seeing the raw data. The flat look means you have room to shape the image in editing. If you ever wondered why your color grading looks weird, this is why. You can't grade what is there. So most beginners shoot in normal and then they try to apply a cinematic preset in editing and the results look worse than the original clip. They blame the preset, they try a different one, but have the same result, and the problem was never the preset, but the problem that the footage was recorded in the wrong color profile. D-Log-M only makes sense if you're going to edit the footage afterwards. If you post it straight from your drone, then you can stay on normal, but the moment you start grading, switch to D-Log-M, everything changes. So you've got the 3 settings now. Your shutter at double your frame rate, set via the 180-degree rule, the ND filter on the lens to balance the exposure, and D-Log-M to give yourself room to edit. That's the difference between flat footage and cinematic one. But these 3 settings are only the beginning. The reason most beginners stay stuck after they fix the setting is that they don't understand the rest of the system around them. Exposure mistakes that ruin the shot even with the right shutter. White balance that swings every time the light changes. The order of operations when all these 3 settings are wrong at once. I've built the entire system as a module inside Drone Circle, my drone community. It's called Cinematic and Technical Mastery. Every setting, every light situation and every mistake to avoid, broken down with real flight examples. The last lesson puts it all together in a real flight you can follow. If you want to check that out and actually improve your footage, the first link in the description or on my profile takes you straight there. I've also linked my free guide below if you want to start with something lighter. And then you can change the 3 settings on your next flight. Just tell me in the comments what changed for you and I will see you in the next one.